Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Just One Thing for Health and the Let's Talk About It show. We're going to talk about whole food, plant-based success stories of everyday people. And while I call them everyday people, they're really exceptional people because they've got a story to tell about their journey and the miracles that they've experienced. And I just want to welcome everyone and welcome our guest. Today we have Ms. Kim Heger. Kim is an integrated health coach, a cancer survivor, and a life thriver. And I call her a life thriver because she's doing some amazing things right now. And I would love for you to meet Kim. Kim, hi there and welcome.
Hi, Velin.
Oh, it's
Nice,
awesome
nice to see you.
having you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I love your story. I think when we spoke, there were just so many similarities in our journeys and the
Mhm.
whole fitness and then corporate but tell our audience a little bit about you, who you are, where you are, and how you experienced being faced with a situation that kind of helped you to get into whole food, plant-based diet and lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So yes, you and I had some similarities when we first met and shared our own stories. And mine really did start as a very, I was quite young. I was about 18, 19 years old, and I really started to really feel a passion for, fitness and being healthy and staying fit. And my focus early in my, life was really around hardcore, I'll say hardcore fitness. So I was a fitness instructor. I did spin classes. I did a class called Butts and Guts. And then I got into running and I started running marathons, and then I ran half marathons. And I did that pretty aggressively for about, I don't know, 18 years or so. And then and at the same time, I had graduated from college. I got a degree in public health, and I really thought I was going down the path of corporate health and wellness, and that's where I first started. But I found myself transitioning into other types of HR roles, and so I ended up in human resources. I ended up managing teams, implementing technology. I did that for about 12 to 13 years, and while at the same time continuing to run half marathons and have babies and all that good stuff. And I really led what I thought to be an incredibly healthy life. I was pretty cautious about the things I ate, at least I thought I was. But I know now that the things that I chose to consume probably weren't as healthy as I know they could have been now that I'm in a different place. But anyway, I've been in corporate human resources types of functions for the last 20 some years. And about 12 years ago, I went into consulting. And in consulting, I've been working with a variety of organizations, helping them to kind of transform the whole employee and workforce experience. And we do that through, thinking differently, mindset, people, process, technology, all of these elements, kind of encompassed into one. And a lot of my work, as a matter of fact, has actually been focused around change management. So how do we really encourage employees and managers and leaders of companies to change their thinking around, how we embrace new ways of working and things like that. So I only tell you that because a lot of that work that I did in human resources, while it started in corporate health and wellness, it transitioned into change management and managing change and transition. The last 2 years of the last position that I held, we went through some pretty significant changes around merger acquisition, and I was on the front end of managing the merger of two businesses, one which was an Indian based organization of 150,000 employees, and the company I was a part of was a small startup 2,000 person company in the more in the consulting capacity, implementation of technology. And I found myself for about 18 months being extremely driven and stressed, and it was hard. Yet I felt like I was managing a lot of it the way I had thought I had in my entire life. I continued with my exercise. I wasn't running half marathons at the time because I just didn't have time. But I thought I was managing the stress. I thought I was getting through everything. And it wasn't until I decided I couldn't do it anymore. I just was burnt out, and I didn't know how to feel good anyway. I mean, I started to, basically like the kind of things that you just kind of brush off. I felt I was gaining weight. My stomach was not always pleasant. My digestive system wasn't working as well as I thought it should be. I felt tired. I just literally felt tired. And when I made the decision to quit that job, it was like a load of stress was released. And a month later, I started doing hot yoga, and I had never done hot yoga before. And I thought my initial reaction to it was, I don't have time to lie on the mat for an hour. But what I quickly realized was, wow, this is a lot more than just lying on a mat and stretching. I was getting a full body workout, and I wasn't pounding my joints and, my muscles and feeling like I was just tired all the time. I started to almost feel a lot more energy. So I was doing that for about a month. And again, I had started a brand new job. I'm in a chief people officer role. I'm managing people operations for a startup consulting organization. I love the people I'm working with. And a month into that, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. I was beyond shocked because in my thinking and, in terms of how I lived my life, I was like, how is this happening to me? Why am I being diagnosed with what I thought would never be something I would be faced with? There was no cancer in my family, no history. My family, there's a heart disease and things like that, but no sort of cancer. I'd lived a healthy life. I thought I was eating healthy. I thought I was managing stress, but I do know, after my diagnosis, I was like, I needed to take a step back and really think about how I was living. And when I did that, I immediately, well, of course, as when you're diagnosed with cancer, a lot of things happen really quickly. And I felt a bit out of control right from the beginning. And I thought, I can't allow something else to control my destiny. And so I took it upon myself to really start to learn about why people get cancer. And it really isn't about hereditary. It isn't necessarily about, just in the genes and things like that. It really is about an entire lifestyle. And when I looked back on my life of 24 months, I was stressed out. I wasn't eating as well. I was putting things into my body that weren't potentially healthy. I wasn't exercising as much. And if I was just like going hard and, damaging my body rather than taking care of my body. And then I learned a lot about nutrition. And when I started to track the things that I was eating and the things that would cause cancer, even simple things like, and I had eaten meat my entire life, but I started watching documentaries. I watched Fork Over Knives. I watched What the Health, which was super informative. And it was like, I really wasn't paying that close attention to the animal products that I chose to consume. I didn't eat a lot of red meat, but I ate chicken, I ate turkey, I ate fish and all those sorts of things. But when I went to the grocery store, just like most human beings and people that I was surrounded by, I would look for what was on sale, what looked the biggest, the best, whatnot. And oftentimes if it was chicken breast, they were pumped up with hormones and antibiotics. And I didn't read the labels. I just picked what I thought looks good. And so when I really started to learn about what was going on in our industry of food, I really took a step back and I thought, I haven't been eating healthy. I haven't been paying attention. And, I went through my pantry first and I really started to look at labels, and I looked at, sugar, cancer feeds on sugar. And so immediately I was like, well, I don't eat a lot of sweets. Sweets weren't even that enjoyable for me. But what I did learn was that a lot of the things, the package and the processed foods that were in my pantry were loaded with oils and sugars that were not healthy. And I really started to recognize that if I wanted to take control of my own health, I had to start with what I was consuming. So that's kind of where my journey started. You know, I was really shocked to have to be dealing with cancer. And, but at the same time, now looking back a year, I was diagnosed in August of 2018, and going through a year of treatment and managing my health in a very different way. I am now the healthiest I have ever been in my 49 years of life. So I do contribute a lot of it to my diet, and the other things that I have chosen to do differently as a part of my overall lifestyle. So that was a long-winded answer, I guess, but I just wanted to give you a background on where I came from and where I am today.
That is a great background story because I know that a lot of what people experience is the awakening to a lot of things that they thought were okay.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm living good, I'm eating well until you learn differently. And I think that opening up to that says something about you. And we were talking earlier, you had a health crisis
I did.
that got you to the point where, I mean, did doctors tell you that, what did doctors tell you
Yeah.
that made you kind of seek this information out for yourself?
Right. So that's an interesting, again, because I was not a consumer of the healthcare industry. I was a very healthy person. I had two babies. I was in the hospital for two babies, and that was pretty much it. So as I became, and I'm pretty, like I said, I don't need to necessarily be in control. I want to be knowledgeable about what I am being told I need to do. So initially, when I was diagnosed, they thought it was stage one, to be honest. So it was really hard because I was told it was stage one, early stages. This should be no big deal to take care of. Okay, fine. I had an MRI. The MRI showed something very different. Then I was recommended, right away, bilateral mastectomy because your chance of reoccurrence based on what we're seeing in ultrasound and MRI is quite high. So it was so much information coming at me so quickly. And I thought, okay, I've got to, and I'll be honest, I took that advice right out of the gate, and I had surgery. And when my pathology report came back, I actually was then put into stage 3. I had a 7 centimeter tumor on my left breast, and I also had a positive margin, and my lymph nodes were cancerous. So I had 8 lymph nodes removed. And I didn't know the extent of my cancer until after I was done with surgery. So it wasn't until that time where I sat back and I cried, and I was like, I I I had no idea that this was happening inside of my body. There's a reason beyond the fact that the doctors are telling me you have cancer, but I want to understand the root cause of that. And so that's when I started doing my own research, and I started to learn some work that was being done with the integrative medicine uh, corporation or group down in Texas at MD Anderson. So Lorenzo Cohen is the medical director for integrative care down at MD Anderson, and I read his book, Anti-Cancer Living. And that was probably my first awakening to, anti-cancer living, and nutrition was such a big component of that. And, nutrition and stress management. So then I started reading about stress too. I was like, wow, I was under a lot of stress. And I was eating things from an emotional standpoint as well. So emotion and how you respond to emotion, in many of us, we respond to it with food. And so sometimes not healthy foods, processed foods, things like that. But sleep was another one where I was not sleeping well, and I couldn't figure out why. I'm sure that had to do with the stress I was under. And when you're not sleeping well, your body doesn't have the time to recover from and to regenerate healthy cells. So I think it was the combination of all of those things. And then the foods that I chose to consume, I was like, we would barbecue all the time. There was meat being consumed. Dairy was a big part of my diet at that time. I loved cheese. I would drink milk. That's how I grew up. So, but then when I started reading and I started learning, and I was like, gosh. So let's fast forward. It was about 2 weeks after my surgery, and I had my first appointment with my oncologist. Because of my positive margin, because of the extent of my cancer, chemotherapy was the next point of recommendation. And that really was hard for me because I knew enough about chemotherapy to know that I was damaging every good cell in my body along with cancer cells. And that was going to be very challenging for me to rebuild. So my initial thought, based on what I had been reading and learning and whatnot, was, okay, diet is something I can control. So I started asking my oncologist, my very first appointment, I said, I understand that I have, some aggressive cancer, and that there's a high chance of recurrence if I choose not to do the traditional medical, Western medical, conventional medicine, et cetera. I said, but I'm also the believer that there are other things that I should and could be doing to help rebuild what I might be destroying. So I asked him, I said, what would be your recommendation around diet? And I said, and nutrition, like what are the things that I should be consuming that will help me build my red blood cells that I am now going to destroy? And he immediately looked at me and he said, you know what, Kim, I'm so sorry. He said, but I have no recommendations for you on that. He said, I went to medical school and we learned a very little bit about health and nutrition. He said, I will tell you probably about 30 minutes worth of health and nutrition. So, or nutrition and how it impacts what we were doing. He goes, now I know everything there is to know about how, the chemotherapy works in the body and what it interacts with. And so supplements and things like that, he really discouraged. And he said, but if you're interested in learning more about that, I would just offer you a nutritionist at the hospital. But then even when I went to the nutritionist, it was very basic. It was just the very basics of eating, the food groups. I'm like, well, I know that, but I wanted to know, like, what were the nutrients that were going to help build and why, and what foods, and should I consume them raw or cooked? And does it make a difference? And I really wanted more. And I just couldn't find it in the hospital. And I was just like shocked. I thought, how is this even possible? If we're going to become healthier, we need to have professionals that have some knowledge of this. And so that just led me down a path of learning more and more and more about nutrition. And I, I read Joel Fuhrman's book. I've read a couple other, doctors who were, promoting cancer-free living through diet and using food as medicine. And that's when I really got interested. While I did end up going through with chemotherapy, I had 8 rounds of chemo, but I gave up everything that I knew could potentially cause harm in my body. So that's when I stopped eating meat. I stopped eating dairy. I started consuming more whole grains, less gluten, but really paying attention to the types of grains I was choosing. Tons of fruit, of vegetables, tons of vegetables. I said, eat the rainbow. Every time I would read anything, it was just like, eat the rainbow. So my plate from morning to noon to night was focused on eating the rainbow. And I quickly, even going through chemotherapy, I would say it was probably after my 4th round, which was supposed to be the 4 hardest rounds that I was supposed to go through, I actually felt amazing. And amazing in the sense that I had more energy, which I should not have. I never was sick. I would feel a little, so I'd always get chemo on a Wednesday. Fridays was my hard day. And Friday was the day where I just was sluggish, didn't have as much energy. But I got through Friday and I was like, how am I feeling this good? I'm going through chemotherapy. I'm destroying everything in my body. And the doctor, at the time, I also got acquainted with an integrative oncologist, a more Eastern medicine doctor who was focused in integrative cancer care. And he was part of the clinic and the hospital that I was going to. So he was also a lifesaver for me because he introduced me to acupuncture. He introduced me to cupping. He introduced me to things that would help build energy as it was being depleted. So the balancing of energy within my body and how my body was able to absorb nutrients differently because I was allowing my body to get more in balance. So the yoga, the acupuncture, meditation, all those other things that I believe created a better internal environment inside my body for nutrients to actually be absorbed and fight the disease versus, continue to destroy my internal, well-being. So I got through my chemotherapy amazingly well. And I couldn't, and nobody, even in the doctors at the hospital, was just like, how are you doing this? And I said, you know what? I've really changed my eating. And they were like, really? What are you doing? And I said, well, I've gone pretty much whole, plant-based, whole foods going. I went organic, and I didn't pay attention to organic previously. But when I learned about the pesticides, all the things that are going into our soil, it's not only about the plant, it's not only just about the, what's on the outside, it's what's in our soil. And so when I learned about the different categories of, or even organic, and where your food is sourced, I was like, I was shocked by all these things. And during this period of time, I also started seeing a functional medicine doctor, who then started running my blood work. And I looked at my blood, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so low in vitamin D, I'm low in selenium, I had high aluminum content. I'm like, where did all this come from? Like, I had no idea. Now, so when I started putting all the pieces together, I was like, now I know why I have cancer. It's not because it was hereditary. It's because I was destroying things inside my body when not even knowing I was doing that, whether that was through stress, bad diet, just not taking care of myself, self-care. I mean, self-care was always the last thing on my list because I had everybody else to take care of. So, you put all that together, and, you start to realize that lifestyle is what causes chronic disease. And food happens to be, I think, the first thing that people have 100% control over. And so taking control of that and really changing those things has led me to believe that it is medicine. Food is medicine. And it's helped me tremendously.
That is awesome. I have no words. What a great explanation. And you brought in so many aspects, from the emotional aspect and bringing in more of Western medicine, Eastern medicine, with acupuncture and cupping and meditation and yoga. And these are things that typically, as Americans, we think are on the woo-woo side of things, or they're the eccentric among us, and actually it is part of what is in our nature to have and do for ourselves. And thank you. Those three things: stress, bad diet, and self-care, they do impact us.
Absolutely.
And women, I mean, the number of men that are contracting cancer these days continues to increase, but it has always been women who have been the majority of those suffering. And we're talking about cancer, but you've mentioned it a couple of times that this is the progression of chronic illness. It doesn't necessarily have to be cancer that this applies to. And if there was one thing that you would have people to kind of focus on to change, one habit to change in order to kind of turn the corner on this journey. They may be on medication, they may not be on medication, they may be this healthy person that thinks they're doing everything right. I know that's a big bubble to get just one thing out of, but what would your one thing be for people to do?
Wow, that is difficult to say, because I think the one thing that I believe has truly transformed who I am is about how I've chosen to eat. So that I think was the first thing. But when I started to feel better physically, like just again, no bloating, my skin got better, I felt radiant, I had more energy. When those things started to improve, then it was like a light bulb went off, and I was like, there's a different, I feel different. I felt lighter. I felt happier. And it was when I started to feel happier and I connected it to how my body was feeling. And the reason my body felt that way was because I was feeding it differently. Then it was like this inner peace. And this is the part that I think is so hard sometimes to realize, is that oftentimes I think we're living our life for something else, for someone else, rather than living it for who we are. And being, and this is what I believe created my whole like healing was I accepted myself for who I was at the time that I was dealing with what I was dealing with, and tried not to. So I say the one thing is food, because I think that triggers so many more things in our well-being that creates a better life. And it's just creates more happiness. It creates more joy in your heart. And when you feel that, you don't want to be consuming or eating crap anymore. It's just, and then it just becomes a part of who you are, right? And that's where I think most people struggle, is that they can't necessarily love and appreciate just who they are. And they might be doing what they're doing. And that could be coming through food. It could be coming through emotion. It could be coming through relationships, that creates this kind of turmoil inside. And when I changed how I chose to eat is when I felt completely different. So when I say one thing too, I guess I start small. I mean, this is not about transforming overnight. It took me 1 year to truly feel the way I feel today. But I start small. I mean, the first thing I gave up was dairy, to be honest. It wasn't even meat. It was dairy. It was like, I don't need the dairy. I have other ways that I can, get calcium and all those sorts of things. And I started to learn that. So start small. You can't give up everything that you've maybe loved and have enjoyed for your entire life. So start small. The next thing I did was I really started to look into the meats that I was consuming. I ate a lot of deli meat. I was like, I had no idea all the nitrates and the things that I was consuming just based off of, and I thought I was eating the healthy deli meat. Well, it wasn't, so then when you start to just gradually eliminate some of those things and you start to consume more of the good things. So the vegetables, the fruits, the grains, you start to, it's almost like your taste buds begin to transform also. And you all of a sudden you have a craving for those foods that maybe you never even liked, because you're not putting in the chemicals anymore, right? And those foods start to, like, the flavors just would be abundant, So I really do encourage, anyone who's just not feeling great, fatigue, less energy, just start with food. It really does make a huge difference in everything else. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you. That was passionately expressed, and I appreciate that. I'm sure those who will be watching this will appreciate that as well, because you're on the other side of something that a lot of people are still in the middle of or at the beginning of. And it is our hope and our goal that everyone watching this will hear Kim's story and know that it's possible for you too. Know that if you have a family member or a friend who is going through something, that there is a solution outside of pills and potentially surgery. And we are going to be bringing you these kinds of wonderful stories as time goes on, and really to support you through the holidays too. So we're going into the holidays, Kim. What would you suggest that people kind of do to support themselves through this holiday period, when everywhere you go, all of the decadent foods and all of the cheeses that we know everybody has come to love and just say, no, no more, or it's like, it's so hard. What would you give people to encourage them during this time?
Oh yeah. Well, for me personally, it's I need to hit my yoga mat at least, 5 days a week. And I know that's not realistic for all, but set yourself a goal to stay active, to like just whatever it is for you. Because when you are nourishing your body, physically, you have a desire to consume things that feel better inside your body. So stay active, whatever that is for you. It might just be a daily walk. It might be yoga every day, whatever it is, stay active. And then secondly is when you go to these celebrations and such, let people know that if you're moving towards more of a plant-based diet, ask to bring a dish, and bring a dish that you're going to enjoy. So the fresh vegetables, maybe it's something that isn't as sugary and decadent as something else, and then you choose to consume what you've brought. So I use that as an example. I also think sometimes it's really hard over the holidays. There's alcohol, there's these decadent foods, etc. So like I'll bring kombucha, I'll bring my own. I'm always with my water bottle, always. Like, drink lots of water before you go to events. And that way, you're feeling more full and you don't have that desire to maybe eat everything that's in front of you. But again, I think, just staying active, drink tons of water, tell people that you're feeling great and you want to stay healthy during the holidays, and then make healthy choices while you're there. So, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. And that's what we encourage. Just one thing for health really is about doing just one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you've got that in, then go to the next one thing. And be kind to yourself. A lot of times we think that, we're trying to do the best and we're falling off the wagon. Well, it's not falling off the wagon. It may just be having a leg off the side.
Right.
Bring that leg back in, or if you have fallen off, just pick it up and start all over again. That's what life gives us.
That's a great point, Velan. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I do absolutely, I am not perfect by any means. And I fall off the wagon, or my leg gets over the edge sometimes. And like I said, I might have a bit of cheese on occasion. But you're right. I don't beat myself up over it either. If it's something that I chose to have that day, okay, fine. Tomorrow's a different day. And I also think that's why people get into a cycle sometimes of just not being able to hit their goal or accomplish what they're trying to achieve, because they beat themselves up for maybe, going backwards one step. Always look forward. It's okay. And I love the saying, just let it go. I mean, let it go, and don't let it hinder your ability to make progress the next day, because every day we wake up, we have a brand new start. And that's one thing, especially having been diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. You just never know you definitely never know. So if I wake up tomorrow morning, I take a deep breath, 3 of them, and I just thank God for giving me my breath today, and make it the best day you possibly can. Even if yesterday I screwed up a little bit, it's okay. So
beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. And we're going to leave you with that. And thank you, Kim, for being here and sharing your story. I love it. And blessings to you, because you've come a long way. And there's so many people out there that I feel as though you, having gone through what you've gone through, will inspire them to make the journey themselves and be successful. There's so much to live for. And I think that, when we understand that it's been the food that we've consumed that has been our poison, and that we can change it, not a pill, and not, the things that conventional Western medicine wants us to believe are the solutions. Our solution goes back to Hippocrates and saying, let food be thy medicine.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Velan.
I loved it, and I've loved being in this time with you, in this space with you. I love where you are. That sunshine is beautiful.
I know, it's my vitamin D. I'm getting some vitamin D for today. Sunny Florida. Yeah.
Soak up sun for me too.
I know. Well, thank you so much, Velan. I wish you the best, and
I have, I'm looking at, I have one more quick question.
Yeah.
I'm going to share my screen real quick, because I think there's a story here that I'd love for you to share. Let's see here. You see that?
Yes, I do.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, that was fantastic. So I actually chose to go to MD Anderson down in Houston, Texas for my final radiation oncology. And because I had some complications after my surgery and such. So I got a second opinion. I felt super comfortable. I loved all the work they were doing for cancer prevention at MD Anderson. So I went and I lived in Texas for 7 weeks, and it's where I did my 33 rounds of radiation, and I seriously will cry. So my husband and I were driving home from Texas, and we came around the corner of my neighborhood, and there were probably 60 people in my neighborhood welcoming me home after my time away. And these are all of my bunch of my girlfriends who are just dear and near to my heart, and they supported me like you can't believe. That's the other thing. Just having support, your social net, just family, friends, networks of people who prayed for me time and time again and would send me prayers and letters. And I could not have been more inspired by other people. While they would tell me I was inspiring them, I was like, oh my gosh, no. So this was my welcome home, and it really was special. It was amazing to come home and have that kind of a welcome. So yeah, it was great. Thanks for asking.
Oh, that's a beautiful. See, I knew there was a beautiful
Right
story there. Well, once again, thank you, Kim. Thank you to all of you who are looking at this video, watching the video. Comment on the video. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know if you have a story and you'd like to be interviewed and tell your story. One of the things that we know is so empowering is for people to hear the stories of others who've done what they thought that they could not do.
Yes.
And Kim is truly an example of that. Thank you for sharing with us, and we're going to be seeing more of you over the course of
Absolutely.
time. I know that. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you the next time that we actually are doing Let's Talk About It. Just one
Excellent.
thing for health.
All right.
Bye for
Thank
now.
you. Bye-bye.